Welcome back to the Inner Circle Show. What a crazy day it was in the market on Monday. It started off with the entire market plummeting. The whole market was crashing, and then platforms were breaking due to high volumes of users on them, and then we started to see a slow recovery take place, and then the main star of the show happened, the main event. Palantir's Q2 earnings. So we really need to dive in to those earnings in today's video. But before we get into all of that, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on so you do not miss an upload Monday through Friday. After the results came out, I posted this on X. Being a Palantir investor and follower feels pretty damn good right now. And it really did. The earnings were absolutely incredible. So in this video, I want to make sure I do a deeper dive into really what happened. There might be some things in this video that you maybe missed when you listened or you read the earnings yourself. I'm going to tell you all the main things and then some of the more nuanced things. So if you're a Palantir investor, please make sure you're listening. So just to get some of the headline stuff out the way first, this is obviously really important and this is what people see as soon as the earnings are released. And that is that Palantir had a double beat on estimates. They beat both revenue and EPS. So revenue estimates were $652 million. Their revenue came in at $678 million, meaning they beat it and then some. Similar thing with EPS estimates. The estimations were 8 cents and they came in at 9 cents. They also raised guidance, and we all know how important having optimistic guidance has been recently, but we'll speak more about that later on in the video. And the stock price was wild post-market after earnings. It went up by quite a substantial amount, and then moving into Tuesday, it came down a little bit, but it was still pretty impressive. Now, again, we will talk about that later on in the video. But let's start to dive in a little bit deeper into some of these numbers and what they actually mean. The first thing that I want to point out is that their total revenue growth came in at 27% year over year. Total meaning both segments, the commercial side and the government. This came in at 27%. And this was really, really great growth to see because last quarter, this number was 21%. I did say in my pre-earnings video, which came out like 6 days ago now or something, that I wanted to and I expected to start seeing higher revenue growth than 21%. I think I said I want to see it start getting closer to the 30 mark, to start approaching that 30% mark. So I'm very pleased with this because that is exactly what we're seeing happen here. And for a while, Palantir has had lower revenue growth than maybe people would want to see, maybe what people are expecting to see from a growth tech software company that are still pretty early and should be demonstrating a lot of growth. So some people have, used that as a criticism against Palantir. I've always said, my opinion's always been that it will come. 21% is not what they're going to stay at. They are doing everything right in the business, and revenue is a lagging indicator, meaning that if they get a contract, it's not going to show up straight away. And also us retail investors only get this detailed insight once every 3 months through earnings. So 27% is fantastic, and I think this will continue to improve. I now want to see them hit that 30% mark. I had a little look back, and Palantir themselves actually guided for 22.51% revenue growth year over year for Q2. So they hit 27, so they smashed their own predictions, which is pretty good to see. Now, I do also want to point out quickly that in the earnings, the way that they are recorded, the way that they are presented, and in this video, we quite often look at year over year growth, whether that's revenue, whether that's any other metric. We do have to remember that Q2 2023, so what we are referring to when we say year over year growth, it wasn't the strongest quarter ever. It was still good and it was still moving in the right direction, but it was not the strongest quarter that we've ever seen before. So do remember this when we're looking at year over year growth. But even having said that, these earnings were absolutely fantastic. Now, with revenue growth, Palantir break this down into two parts. They have their commercial segment and their government segment. So the US commercial grew at 55% year over year, which was honestly amazing to see. And then their US government segment grew at 24% year over year. So both of those areas are showing growth and strong momentum. And this makes complete sense. Palantir have been showing dramatic improvements in their strategy, in their sales, their go-to-market strategy. Their AIP bootcamps have been accelerating in frequency. We're seeing these pop up globally. They're happening more and more, and we've also seen the increased demand for AIP, and on top of this, many big customers and even not so big customers have been renewing and expanding their existing contracts. Government-wise as well, I did say in my pre-earnings video that we've had some pretty big contracts come in recently. We've had the Project Maven, we've had the phase 3 of the Project Titan contract, we've had that contract with the Lithuanian government. You know, there's been others, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but we do expect to start seeing these show up soon, and this could be happening, but we don't really get a massive insight as to when they show up because the revenue from these can actually be split up across quarters, so it's a little bit hard to know. So US commercial and US government did well, we've just seen that. But what about the international side of the business? Well, we do know that they have started getting some pretty big international contracts. For example, the NHS one here in the UK. The government international revenue grew at just under 21% year over year. Now, this figure is not listed on the presentation or in the reports. You have to do some maths to find this out. But, you know, this is not as high as the US government side, but that's kind of expected. The commercial international revenue grew at just under 15% year over year. So again, not as high as the US commercial as expected, not as impressive as that, but you know, it's still growing. 15% is what we're seeing at the moment. And I really do think we will see this slowly start to build, both the government international and the commercial international. There is a lot of scope there, and there is a massive total addressable market for Palantir to start capturing. But it does make sense that they would focus primarily at the start on the US side of the business. Moving over to customer count, this is another thing that is important to look at. The US commercial customer count grew at 83% year over year and 13% quarter over quarter. And looking at these graphs here, you can see that the customer counts are trending perfectly. They are going upwards and to the right. The total customer count grew at 42% year over year in the last quarter. So this quarter is only seen to grow at 41% year over year and only 7% quarter over quarter. So it's not exactly the acceleration that maybe we would love to be seeing in these numbers, but it's still okay. It's still good. They're doing these boot camps, and you know, it's clear that customers are interested, customers are signing up, but these again don't show up straight away. The point at which a customer is called a customer at Palantir doesn't just happen when they show interest into AIP or when they sign up for AIP. It happens at the point when they're actually getting revenue from that customer, I believe. Net dollar retention was another thing that I was very impressed by. I said that I wanted to see it stay above 110%. It came in Q1 at 111%, and this quarter they reported 114%. So I was very happy with this. It just basically indicates how well a company can grow its revenue from its existing customer base without actually having to acquire new customers. And we do see that Palantir have a very strong customer retention. Customers want to stay with Palantir. Why is that? Well, that's because they are showing value. They are getting such value from Palantir, they don't want to go elsewhere. And in fact, what we're seeing is those existing customers are looking for ways to expand their contract with Palantir. They're renewing and expanding. So Palantir have been able to actually grow their revenue from these existing customers very well. So 114% is great, but I think they can do better. They've had quarters in the past where they've hit 130% and even higher than that. So we'll just have to track this and see what happens. And then we had the rule of 40, and this really did just blow it out the park. This was fantastic. Their rule of 40 was 64%, which is extremely good. And you can see that is the highest it's been in quite a long time. And now apparently Palantir has beat out CrowdStrike as the growth stock with the highest rule of 40 score. There's no doubt that Palantir are looking extremely strong financially and fundamentally speaking, but it's also good to see that they have actually now increased their cash equivalents and treasuries to $4 billion. This is the highest it's ever been, I believe. Last quarter it was 3.9 billion, but they've also got no debt. And this obviously dramatically helps them reduce the risk of bankruptcy, but it also means that they are very agile, they are very flexible, and allows them to move quickly on strategic investments that will grow the business further in the future. If you cast your mind back to a year ago, to about August time last year, You'll probably remember that Palantir announced a massive $1 billion share buyback plan, and it looks like they have been buying back their shares. In fact, they have been repurchasing about $26.7 million worth of their shares. We saw that their operating income has now increased to 37%, and this is indicating how Palantir is becoming more and more efficient at converting revenue into operating income. They are becoming more efficient at generating profits from their operations. Something that was really clear to me in this earnings is that Palantir are heavily focusing on taking their customers from prototypes to production. And they are also heavily continuing to push AIP bootcamps. And this highlights their commitment to ensuring successful adoption and integration of their AI platform. And you can see in this slide here, they have said, we are focused on taking our customers across the chasm from prototype to production. Since launching AIP in mid-2023, we have completed AIP bootcamps with over 1,025 organizations in the United States and around the world. The launch of AIP, along with the AIP bootcamps and the AIP con events that we have been seeing take place, have really helped Palantir gain new customers. Just 4 years ago, Palantir only had 14 commercial customers in the United States. They have now nearly 300. That is some seriously impressive growth. And I think a lot of people forget that Palantir do these bootcamps with no real guarantee of conversion to revenue. They put a lot of upfront resources into them, but they don't really know what the payoff's going to be. Having said that though, they do seem to be doing very well. It seems to be a strategy that has really taken off. And during the call, the team were actually asked what differentiates Palantir from its AI competitors. And Sharm said, all the value and where the market is completely bottlenecked is on that transition from prototyping to production. And this really reminded me of Tesla actually. This whole idea that prototypes are easy, any company can come up with a prototype, but actually doing that in production at scale is a completely different game. It's incredibly hard. And if companies can get that part down, they really stand out. And then we had this slide. This is a real star of the show, I think. If you look at this first column here, you can see that it only took 16 days after a bootcamp happened to get a seven-figure 2-year deal. And these short timelines that we're seeing indicates the efficiency and the effectiveness of the bootcamps in convincing the clients of the value of Palantir's platforms. Show value, don't just tell. And then you can see that following the successful signing of the initial deal, discussions are then underway for the enterprise-wide contract. And this is implying that the initial project had been so successful to warrant consideration of expanding Palantir's solutions across the entire organization, potentially leading to even more of a larger comprehensive engagement, meaning retention and expansion. And let's not forget that Palantir announced a new product, Warp Speed. Warp Speed is a new operating system designed for the modern American manufacturer. Now, at this current time, we don't have loads and loads of information from it. But if we think about what we do know and what description was given when Sharm was asked questions about this on the call, it seems that it will integrate various essential manufacturing and operating systems, including ERP, MES, PLM, and PLCs. And it integrates as well with the factory floor. I do believe that it is built on AIP, but it will have support from Foundry. And this, in my opinion, should be very well received because it's going to remove the limitations of traditional ERP systems. They tend to be quite inefficient, they tend to be very old-fashioned, and they have lagged data, which means that you can't really make very good real-time decisions. When they were speaking about Warp Speed, parallels were drawn to SpaceX and Tesla. They spoke about how all founders driving reindustrialization know it. And this is why SpaceX had to build their own ERP. Like I said earlier, Palantir raised their full-year guidance. And as a result of this, we saw that many Wall Street analysts, well, most of them, not all of them, of course, there's still some very bearish ones out there, also raised their price targets. For example, Dan Ives, the wonderful Dan Ives. He posted saying, "We are raising our price target to $38 a share from $35 as the AIP story now takes hold for Palantir. Our bull case is $50 a share." This was a game changer quarter for the Palantir story as the AIP monetization story shines. Haters will hate on this one, but US commercial AI speaks for itself. And he wasn't the only one raising price targets. It wasn't just analysts and us retail investors that had a crazy time with these fantastic earnings. The stock also had a crazy time. Before earnings, the stock price was down, and then the earnings were released and the stock price went up, up and up. 10%, 13%, 18%, 19%. The sky seemed to be the limit. And then Tuesday rolled around and we saw that Palantir were actually able to hold most of those gains during the market open. It didn't stay at 19% or anything like that. I think it came down a little bit to maybe 11%. I can't remember. Let's actually have a look what it closed at. So it actually closed at 10.38%, which is really, really fantastic. And if we look back to what happened in February, we saw that over a very short period of time, maybe 5 days or something, the stock price increased dramatically. Not saying that that's going to happen this time round. We'll have to wait and see. But you know, the market really, really liked these earnings. And we have to remember as well that Palantir are not yet included in the S&P 500. I would say that that's probably the next big catalyst that we are expecting to see in September. But we might also see other big deals come in before then. Who knows? If you haven't already, please find time to read the letter to shareholders from Alex Karp. But in that letter, Karp said, "A premium was placed on developing software products whose principal purpose was to sell themselves, and a perception of value became more important than the value itself." And I think he is absolutely spot on there. I elaborated much more on this whole idea in my most recent Palantir video, which you should be able to click on. It should be on the screen right now. And in that video, I did a lot of research to explain to you guys how Palantir are very, very different from the rest of the AI market. But these earnings were honestly amazing. One of the best that I've seen from Palantir. I'm very proud to be a shareholder, and thank you to all you guys that came and joined the Discord. It was fun speaking to you in real time as these earnings were coming out. I'm really eager to just keep following Palantir, researching what they're doing and talking about them on here with such a great community. Do let me know what your highlights were from these earnings in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.